Just a couple of days ago, just in time for Halloween, I was reading an article online. What was the top 10 things that most people would admit that they're afraid of. And interestingly enough, none of the things that you would really associate with Halloween were on there. In the top 10 were not ghosts or vampires or ghouls or anything like that. They were more mundane things. Number one, I think, perhaps unsurprisingly, was fear of public speaking in front of large groups of people. Others included fear of rejection, fear of not having enough that they would need at retirement to make ends meet, just sort of day-to-day fears that perhaps most human beings experience. But what I found interesting was what was not on that list. Because I think if we're honest about it, it would probably be the number one fear for every human being. In fact, I would say it's such a deep-seated fear that we oftentimes prefer not to even think about it. And I would also say, as human beings, it is our greatest enemy. It has haunted us like a specter ever since the beginning, when it came into our condition at the garden, at the fall of mankind, at the original sin. Talking about death itself. Death, which I know, again, we don't often like to think about, but really at some deepest part of who we are, underlies our deepest fears. And it's our greatest enemy because it seems like death always wins. It seems like it always has the last word. It takes from us those we love, those we would rather remain with. And it looms over us as something in store for everyone at some point in the future. And yet, despite all of that, despite it perhaps being our most deep-seated fear and certainly our greatest enemy in this life, our church has always had a very cavalier attitude towards death, is always rather bold when considering death. In our tradition, we have always held that the place for those who have died to be laid to rest, our cemeteries and tombs, were sacred places. The notion of death is always before us if you really pay attention to the prayers and the liturgy, to what underlies what we're asking God for. It was a tradition in monasteries that each of the cells of the monks and religious sisters would have an image of some sort of image, a skull or something like that of death, so that it was the last thing they saw before they went to bed, the first thing they saw when they woke up, this reminder, this memento mori. And by far our most prominent symbol in our faith, the crucifix, depicts Christ at the moment of his death. So why is it then that we face this enemy with such boldness? Here on November 2nd, we celebrate All Souls Day, the day in which we are given every year to remember those that we have lost and to come face to face with death itself. And we do this precisely because we believe, we are told in our faith, that this, our greatest enemy, has already been defeated. I would even argue that what I just read from the gospel is called that, what Deacon just read from, is called that because that word, gospel, means good news. There is no better news for us as human beings that our church gives us than this knowledge that death has already been defeated. The one thing that lies at the deepest fears of who we are no longer has power over us. It no longer needs to have power over us. Because on Good Friday, when Christ entered into death himself, he broke its power. And he rendered it as nothing more than a doorway to Easter Sunday. Think about, if you will, what our faith tells us lies on the other side of that doorway. For those who believe this, for those who cling to Christ, for those who accept the invitation to become a part of his kingdom here on earth, what does death render to? First of all, a place where there is no more suffering, there is no more pain. Anything that might have held us back in this life is removed. A place we rightfully call heaven or paradise. A place in which at long last we are united with the one thing that we desire above all else, the God who created us. We also believe that not only are we fully united with God in that place, but we are reunited with those who have gone before, with the others who have passed through that doorway. For any one of you who has lost someone that you love, for anyone who has experienced death quite close to themselves, which I would think is most of us, imagine, if you will, that reunion with a mother or father or sibling or spouse or child or friend. To believe that while we had to say goodbye, it was only a goodbye for now and not a goodbye forever is an incredible part of that good news that Christ gives us. And then, of course, especially in our Catholic faith, we believe that those who are separated from death, from all of us here, are not separated in our journey towards God. That they are still with us, and that those in heaven are still able to watch over and intercede for us. And that we too, one day, until we join them, can be assured of their prayers. All of these things that our faith tells us are the very reason that we can face death boldly and without fear. Now, of course, we have to acknowledge the human aspect of this. We mourn those who die. That's why on All Souls Day, traditionally, the color is black, the color of mourning, the traditional color of mourning. There's a part of us that still knows this was not meant to be in our condition. We were not created this way in Eden. Not until the fall did death enter into our condition, and still it's tragic. Still it's hard. Christ himself wept for Lazarus, his friend, when he died. The mourning is a natural part of saying goodbye to those that we love. But our mourning is overcome by hope. If we allow it, our mourning is even overcome by joy, because we are reminded of all those things our faith gives us in the face of our greatest enemy which has already been defeated. And so on this day, I wish you a happy All Souls Day. And may it be for all of us that we grow deeper in this faith, which gives us such courage, gives us such hope, and reminds us of what is in store for those who give themselves to Christ.